The state trooper looked at my wife and asked one simple question. "Ma'am, have you ever been to this cabin before?" She froze. Not for a second, not for 2 seconds. She stood there completely still, like all the air had left her body. And in that moment, after 23 years of marriage, 23 years of building a life together, I finally understood. Everything clicked into place. All those years she begged me to sell that cabin, said she hated the lake, said it was too far, too cold, too quiet. I always believed her. I was a fool. The trooper looked at me next. I didn't say a word. I just nodded slowly and said, "Officer, I think my wife has something she'd like to tell you." She never got the chance, because what they didn't know was I had already spent 6 quiet months making sure she didn't need to. If stories like this hit close to home, hit that like button and subscribe, because every week we share real stories about real people who found justice the right way. My name is Gerald. I'm 67 years old. I grew up in a small town outside of Traverse City, Michigan. My father built that lake cabin with his own 2 hands in 1971. It wasn't fancy. 3 rooms, a wood stove, a dock that needed fixing every spring, but it was ours. When my father passed in 1998, he left the cabin to me, just me, because he said, and I still remember his exact words, "Gerald, you'll know what to do with it." I met Linda 2 years before that. We married in 1999. From day one, she pushed to sell the cabin. I always said no. That cabin was the only piece of my father I had left. It was where I went to think, to breathe, to feel like myself again. Over the years, we argued about it more times than I can count. Linda would say it was a money pit, a burden, a distraction. I told her it was my inheritance, my family's history. She eventually stopped fighting me on it, or so I thought. Looking back now, I realize she had stopped fighting because she had already found another way, but I didn't see that then. There was one small thing, though, that always nagged at me. A neighbor, old Harold from down the road, once mentioned seeing a car parked near my cabin on a weekend I was in Detroit for work. I asked Linda about it. She said Harold was just a confused old man. I believed her. Big mistake. The summer I turned 64 was the hardest of my life. I had just retired after 31 years at the auto plant. My back was shot. My knees weren't much better. I was supposed to enjoy that cabin now, finally. That was the whole plan. Linda had other ideas. That August, she sat me down at the kitchen table and said she wanted a divorce. No warning, no counseling, no conversation. Just, "Gerald, I haven't been happy for a long time. I need to move on." I sat there at that table for what felt like an hour. The coffee went cold. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just felt something heavy settle in my chest, like a door closing somewhere deep inside. We had no kids, just the house in Detroit and that cabin up north. She wanted half of everything, including the cabin, my father's cabin. Sadly, this wasn't the only family secret. I'll link that story here. I remember looking at her and thinking, she doesn't want the cabin. She never wanted the cabin. So why does she suddenly want half of it? That was the question that changed everything. I didn't say it out loud. I just made a quiet decision right there at that cold kitchen table. I was going to find out the truth. Whatever it took, however long it took, I was going to find out. I didn't hire a lawyer right away. I hired a private investigator first. His name was Roy, retired state police, quiet man. The kind of man who doesn't say much, but sees everything. I told him about the cabin, about Harold's comment years ago, about Linda's sudden interest in a property she claimed to despise. Roy just nodded and said, "Give me 3 weeks." I gave him 6. During those weeks, I kept everything normal on the surface. I didn't fight with Linda. I didn't ask questions. I made coffee every morning. I watched the Tigers games in the evening. Inside, I was watching, listening, waiting. 2 weeks in, Roy called me on a Tuesday afternoon. "Gerald," he said, "When's the last time you went up to the cabin?" I told him it had been 4 months. He paused. Then he said, "You might want to take a drive up there this weekend." So I did. I parked down the road, just like Roy told me, and I watched. That Saturday evening, a silver SUV pulled into my driveway. A man got out. He had a key. My key. He walked right into my father's cabin like he owned it. I sat in my truck for a long time. The sun went down over the water. The pines went dark. I didn't feel anger, not right then. I felt something colder. Clarity. Because I knew now this wasn't just a divorce. This was something that had been happening for a long time, right under my nose, in my father's house. Drop a comment right now. Did you see this coming? And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Every week, we bring you stories about ordinary people who found extraordinary strength. Roy confirmed everything within the week. The man's name was Dennis. He was a contractor Linda had met 8 years earlier. 8 years. They had been meeting at my cabin, my father's cabin, for nearly a decade. And now that I was retired and had more time, she wanted out. She wanted the cabin as part of her settlement. Not because she loved it, because Dennis wanted to live there. Was any of this intentional? Every bit of it. I met with my lawyer the following Monday. Her name was Patricia. Sharp woman, 30 years of family law. She had seen everything. I laid out everything Roy had found, the dates, the photographs, the key records. Patricia looked at me over her glasses and said, "Gerald, you know what this means for the asset division." I nodded. In Michigan, marital misconduct can be a factor in property division. Patricia said the cabin, which was my inheritance, deeded solely to me before the marriage, was likely protected anyway. But the photos, the timeline, the deception, that changed the whole picture. Linda had walked into my lawyer's office 3 days earlier, bold as you please, with her own attorney demanding 50-50 on everything, including the cabin. She thought she held all the cards. She didn't. Know that I had spent 6 months quietly collecting every single one. The first crack appeared 2 weeks later. Linda's attorney called Patricia and asked to revisit the cabin situation. Revisit, that was the word they used. Patricia told me about it over the phone. I could hear the small smile in her voice. "They're nervous," she said. "Good, they should be." But I wasn't done. Because there was still one piece Linda didn't know about. One thing that was going to change everything, not just the divorce settlement, everything. This wasn't the only quiet plan. I'll link that story here. 3 months before Linda asked for a divorce, I had updated my estate documents. Not because I suspected her, because my doctor had found something concerning in my blood work and told me to get my affairs in order. It turned out to be nothing serious, but the process made me think. I had always assumed Linda would inherit everything. But sitting in that estate attorney's office, a feeling came over me, quiet and certain, and I made a change. I set up a charitable trust. The cabin, the property, all 14 acres along the lake, I transferred them to a foundation named after my father, the Robert Gerald Marsh Conservation Trust. The mission? Preserve the land, let local families use it, keep it natural forever. Linda didn't know. She had been plotting to claim a property that was already gone, legally, permanently, and completely beyond her reach. When her attorney finally got the full picture during discovery, the call to Patricia lasted less than 4 minutes. Linda's legal strategy collapsed overnight. She wasn't getting the cabin. She wasn't getting any part of it. And because of the documented affair, the deception, the misuse of my property, the fraud she had attempted to pull in the settlement, her overall share of the marital assets was significantly reduced. But here's the part that still gives me peace when I think about it late at night. The state trooper. 2 weeks after the settlement was finalized, local authorities were called to the cabin because someone had broken in. The someone was Dennis. He had apparently believed, based on what Linda told him, that they would be living there soon. When the trooper arrived, Linda happened to be there too, waiting in the car like she still had some claim to that land. The trooper walked up to her window and asked the question I started this story with. "Ma'am, have you ever been to this cabin before?" And she froze. Because the cabin now belonged to a trust, a foundation. The public record was crystal clear. She had no legal standing to be there. Neither did Dennis. The poetic irony? Linda had spent 23 years trying to erase that cabin from my life, and instead, she helped me preserve it forever. My father's name is on a bronze plaque by the front door now. Robert Gerald Marsh, a man who built things that last. The divorce was finalized on a Thursday in October. I drove up to the cabin that same evening. I sat on the dock with a cup of coffee and watched the sun go down over the lake. The water was still. The pines were turning gold, and for the first time in years, maybe the first time in decades, I felt at peace. Linda and Dennis did not get their ending. He moved out of state not long after. The relationship, apparently, couldn't survive contact with reality. Linda sold her portion of the Detroit house and rented an apartment. She calls her sister a lot now, from what I hear. I don't say that with cruelty. I say it because there's a quiet kind of justice in watching someone choose deception and then find out that the life they were building on lies was never real to begin with. I kept my father's cabin. More than that, I gave it to the future, and no one can ever take it away. That state trooper looked at me after Linda froze. He didn't need me to explain anything. He saw it on her face. All of it. 23 years of secrets can live in a person's body, and one single question in the right moment can pull every one of them to the surface. My father always told me, "Gerald, patient water carves the deepest stone." I didn't understand that when I was young. I understand it now. The greatest revenge isn't anger. It isn't noise. It's quiet. It's careful. It's building something so solid that when someone tries to take it from you, there's simply nothing left to take because you already gave it away, on your own terms, to something that matters. If someone in your life has ever betrayed your trust, know this: you don't have to explode to win. You just have to outlast them. Before you go, I want to ask you something. Has patience ever helped you through a hard situation? Drop your answer in the comments below. Your story might help someone else watching today. If Gerald's story moved you, hit that like button. It helps more people find this channel. Subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story like this one. And if you know someone who needs to hear this today, share it with them. Sometimes a story arrives at exactly the right moment. Thank you for watching. And remember, the truth always finds its way to the surface. Always.